Love to introduce our panel. I'm in awe of everybody. I've known Steve Wilson, who's right here. He's the founder of Forum Phi, which is an architecture firm here in Aspen. They do incredible work, and Steve purposefully started his company with culture being in mind, and we'll sort of draw on that as we go forward. He's had a banner year of awards recognizing this, so I'm sure that will come up in this conversation. Jerry Murdock, who many might know, is in this particular scenario Gina's husband, and don't let that fool you. Jerry founded Aspen Technology Group back in 1987.
Yep.
Is that right? And
Yes.
then I did a little research, and I was like, hey, what was going on in technology back then? And the World Wide Web hadn't yet been launched. So that just gives you some purview about how long Jerry's been in the game.
Gray hair.
From a place of honor, and then went on to found Insight Venture Partners, and again has done tremendously well with his group. And I think I read a statistic that they have over 13 billion in assets under management. So he has a lot of experience bringing companies to life and being part of those teams. So I'm excited to hear your purview on all of this. Mm-hmm. And then Gina Stryker is, I just talked to you for the very first time the other day, and what a force of life. And she owns Gina Cucina, which is a food company here in the Valley. And it seems like wherever she goes, she creates community around food. And then about, 3 years ago, launched into making this a business. So we're excited to hear from her. And then last but not least, Dr. Jerome Burt, who I've had the pleasure of meeting before. Skippy actually invited him to come to Aspen and be part of our launch for Aspen Entrepreneurs this summer, and it was really incredible. So I'm excited to have you back. And Jerome's from Nashville, has a degree in clinical psychology, and before that I learned that he was actually a personal trainer, so one could say he's been a therapist for a lot longer. Still training personally. Exactly. So much like I'm sure you heard a lot when you were a personal trainer as well. And he also did a TED Talk recently called How a Dinner Party Can Save Your Life, and so we'll hear a little bit about that further. And we, as Aspen Entrepreneurs, had the opportunity to partake in an evening that was curated with intention, and it was pretty remarkable, so thank you for that. And part of the thing that Raj talked about yesterday is that 88% of American workers feel that their business doesn't care about them as a human. And that's just kind of a crushing statistic. And so what I'm really excited to talk about today and to listen to is a group of people who actually have brought businesses to life with the purpose of what Raj also said was healing as a business, and that businesses can do that for us even if that's not their specific intention. And so, better to start with, or who better to start with, I should say, Steve. Steve started his own architecture firm in 2006, but prior to that, he worked for another firm here in the Valley and made a conscious decision that he wanted to start his own firm. And I'd just love to hear, how did you come to that decision to take that leap of faith?
I don't know that it was necessarily a leap of faith or something I felt I needed to do. But it was one of those, in architecture, you have to work for a number of hours to gain licensure. And so you're kind of beholden to work for somebody else for quite some time. And after I'd completed these hours and I felt like I was being an effective leader in the company, and I wanted to know where my future was going, and so I sat down with the owner and asked him, are you taking on partners? What's my future look like here? And the answer wasn't one that had a lot of future in it for me. It's my name on the door, and this is my company, and what happens when you retire, man? Well, I guess you get a new job. It's like, oh. Okay, well, that wasn't necessarily, what I was hoping for. And if you're going to put the next 20 years of your life behind something, why would it be to go get another job in 20 years? That just didn't seem like what I wanted to do. So I was 25 at the time and thought to myself, well, I'm really good at being broke. I don't have a lot of responsibility right now. This seems like quite the opportunity to take some risk. So why not? And so I decided to start the company that I wanted to work for, with the goal, not putting my name on the door, not doing any of those things, but with the goal of capturing the future me's to hand it off to.
Thank you. And then Gina, you've had quite a wild ride from Idaho, where you grew up in a small town, and then you went to Florence, and then from Florence you went to New York, and then from New York you went to LA.
Yes.
So you've had obviously a huge breadth of experiences, and LA, I lived in LA for 20 years, and I'm just new to the Valley for the past year and a half. So I would say LA is not the epicenter of culture or great workplace culture, as we can read and see in news with someone like Harvey Weinstein. So it sounds like, though, your experience in the film industry, because you're coming from love, was quite the opposite of that.
Yeah, I think I was fairly blessed. I started with a man of integrity, Frank Marshall, who shepherded me through my career in the film industry, and I worked with him for 6 years. And, certainly there were situations that I got myself in that were uncomfortable, but Frank was always there. He's like, get away from her. So,
Yeah.
So it's Hollywood is a hard place, and it's hard being a woman I was on the business end. I was, so it was a difficult place to kind of forge your own place in the entertainment industry, as you know.
Yeah. And then from that, did you have experiences where at some point you felt like maybe you would start a business, or some of the lessons learned through your experiences that you then are now taking onto your own business?
After 6 years of working for Stephen and Frank and Kathleen, I left. I started out on my own, so I was a gun for hire at that point. Because I didn't want to work for anybody specifically, and I wanted to be able to say no to jobs that I didn't feel were jobs I wanted to be involved with. I did not, however, foresee where I'm at today. So that was although from the time I was about 15, I was told, you need to be in the food, do something with food, you need to do something with food. I said, you know what, I need to do something with film, which I did for 15 years, I guess. And then my husband and I moved here with our 2 4-year-old boys, and then had another set of twins. And 10 years in, I started Gina Cucina, just a few years back now.
Great. And then Jerry, so, when you started, I think you actually started in the tech business before many of us even knew there was such a thing. When you started Aspen Technology Group, tell us a little bit about now. I mean, now in retrospect, you really care about creating and investing in companies that have social impact. Back then, did you have an awareness about creating, a conscious workplace culture?
I just needed to pay the bills. And I needed, to find something that I could do. And so curiosity was the thing that led me to technology, because technology represented how the world was going to change. And so my interest was, how does this stuff, and software was the thing I was interested in 1987. I was interested in it because of the potential of it moving, across networks, across machines, and how it could impact lots of existing people and organizations. And so to me, it was an exciting time. I mean, the Macintosh had only been launched 3 years earlier, so you're in the middle of this PC revolution. Human beings are being empowered for the first time to be able to connect to each other and through this technology, and it was an exciting time. So, but literally I needed to find a way to pay the bills, and I was curious, and so those two things matched up with what I did.
And then how did you grow your team over time? Because I think you were there till 1995 and had many different roles. In that company.
The thing that was important that I learned early when I hired my first manager was that the person was going around telling our team, oh, this is what Jerry thinks, this is what Jerry, you should do, this is how we do it here. And I realized that wasn't going to scale. So I made sure that what our mission was in the company and our principles were explicit, not implied. Because when they're implied in an organization, the middle managers, people begin to say, well, I'm the person that can tell you how to do well here. And that wasn't scaling, because however they interpret it was never going to be 100% the right way. And so you want people to feel it in their heart. You want people to feel from inside themselves that they know what they're doing. They don't want to be told what to do. And so that was one of the things that I learned that we needed to do in order to scale the business.
Great. And then Jerome, from your point of view, you hear obviously a lot of clients in your practice talk about the things that trouble them or issues per se. Can you tell us a little bit about how much impact the workplace has on somebody's life and happiness and also potentially suffering? It's a big question.
It's a big question, and I can take care of it. No, really. I think that a lot of people present with anxiety and depressive symptoms that are usually masking some kind of relational conflict or relational discord. And it can be in their personal life or in their professional life. And I think that it doesn't matter if you have one, you just soon have both, because we can't compartmentalize. We can intellectually, but the body keeps the score. So physiologically, if you are struggling with your spouse, you go to work, cortisol toxic. If you are struggling with your supervisor or your boss, then you come home cortisol toxic. So, that is, I think really that the latter, relational work distress has a greater impact than actually romantic or personal distress, because we need a sense of predictability and control to have a good sense of well-being, and really you don't have that. You don't have as strong a sense of predictability and control at work as you do at home. And so it's sort of like a double whammy. And so that just further emphasizes the influence of the corporate culture. Steve smiles because he knows that his people go home feeling with the oxytocin flowing all doused up because they are so happy at work. But really, corporate culture that can really have an influence on how you roll outside of work.
Thank you. Steve, so when you started Forum Phi, just because since we've talked many times, I know that your workplace was either your car or your apartment, and when you went to get your first client, you put out a blank sheet of paper. So that kind of is predicted sort of how the rest of your company was going to grow, and practices that you have in place today that bring everybody into the company, that they have a voice. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how from the blank you've gone to?
Oh, we're still blank.
There you have it.
But I find that to be kind of the freshest way to start any project. Starting out of your basement and, let's come to your office and see what you've done. And I don't really have an office and I haven't really done anything. But how about I come to you and let's talk about what you want? Which turned out to be a pretty good approach, and not one that I guess most professionals, at least in my profession, were taking. And so we would sit down with a blank piece of paper and start from the client, start with their ideas and grow it together. And it really became a collaboration. And it started with the clients, because it was before I had employees. But as each employee came on, it became important to have that collaboration within the office as well. So we weren't necessarily we didn't have job titles. Things need to get done. If you're good at them, do them. If you think you can handle something or we need something new, great. But it was just add to that blank slate. Let's not have expectations. Let's not have specific directions. Let's not put you in a box. But let's let you kind of be the you want to be. Kind of let you find your special tasks. And that's always been an interesting thing for me, is because I feel like the employees always find interesting things I didn't know would ever exist. And, you know, they come to me and say, Steve, I got this idea, it's going to be amazing. And it's like, okay, go, do it. Here's your blank sheet of paper, go draw on it, make it happen. And that's really how, from that kind of open-minded listening aspect, how we've built the company, how we've built our employment strategies, and how even we've built that company culture, is letting the employees drive, letting the people we're serving drive. Let them find what they love and do it.
You know, Steve told me a story yesterday of one of his employees saying, or that, do you recall?
So it was, we had won Outside Magazine's Best Place to Work in America last year, which when my marketing director started, she was like, which award do you want to win? Fully expecting like AIA or some design award like that. And I was like, I want to be the best place to work. Let's get that Outside Magazine award. And she went and she did it, which was amazing. First try. So as part of that, you get back the feedback, right? That's the sales model is, hey, buy the feedback that your clients gave or your employees gave to you. And, you know, it tells you what's good about your company, what you could change. And what I think I was expressing to you was, what's one of your favorite things about Forum Phi? And one of the employees had put in their evaluation, I can unashamedly be myself every day. And that to me was really powerful.
Yeah.
And to me, it was really powerful because it's like she's saying that I can show self-compassion and self-love and have so much self-appreciation. And I'm doing this at work. And that's the kind of juice that, you know, has a rippling effect, you know, that we're talking about when you go home. You know, you can extend compassion and love to others much more readily when you are feeling it yourself.
Yeah, thank you for
So
that.
kudos to Steve.
Go Steve. Yeah, it's an amazing award to win, and just all the things that they look for in the teams that are chosen, let alone the winner of it, are pretty incredible. I mean, it's all the way from like leadership to how you actually manage the company. I mean, it's how your employees feel, the perks that you give them.
Yeah, it's not just about beer in the fridge and the number of ski
Yeah.
days you get.
Right.
We have those things, but it's not just about that. It's about, you know, benefits and profit sharing. And are the people in your company aware of the direction, and have they had a say, and did they buy in? And it's, you know, you make all these assertions as an owner, and then they go and give you accountability and check it amongst your staff. And so they get a chance to kind of talk back to you. And it turns out we agree.
Well, and then Gina, I know that from we already heard. Thank you for saying that. Gina's full-time job was 2 sets of twins, which is a miracle. And then she had the pleasure of cooking for Rod's retreats here in Aspen for close to a decade, and then finally you decided to launch your company. So truly your company is born from love. So can you talk a little bit about those early days of going from doing this for Rod's business to your own?
It total and utter insanity, but all for, I remember the first farmer's market I attended, I woke up my 13-year-old, and, come on, we're gonna go sell soup. And he's like, Mama, really? And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go do it. So it was, and obviously my husband is a huge support, and I had a group of friends who were like, you, and my older brother as well, like, you have got to start jarring and selling your product. You've got to make a business out of this. And it was really from a circle of love and friendship, and that convinced me to take that leap, to say, okay, I'm gonna try it. And, so that first morning, it was in the end of July, I woke up, and I think Jaden went with me the first time, and we sold out in an hour. A hot soup in the middle of July in Aspen, we sold out in an hour. I was like, and we had more than 100 jars. It was like around 150 jars, and I was stunned. But what we were doing is we were making everybody taste it. So it's like, okay, here, try it. And what we discovered, and it still holds true to this day, if they try it, they buy it, because we so clearly infuse everything with love. The first ingredient on our label was love. until the FDA came after us. They're like, love is not tangible. You may not list it as an ingredient. And I'm like, it's the most tangible ingredient on the label. So our labels now don't start with love, but right on the top tagline is love is the first ingredient, but the FDA won't let us list it.
That's so, even better, even better.
Because I was determined to get it in there, because I do believe that the way we're eating as a society has got to change. And I think the better we feed people, our children, and nourish them, the better their behavior is going to be. I see it in my children. I see if they go out to a friend's house and they're eating Doritos and hot tamales, and they came home and they're really unpleasant to be around. But if they're eating at mama's table, they're a lot more fun, and they're just more balanced. So I do believe, we are trying to change the way people look at food, and there's no preservatives in anything we do. It's all processed, and it's important to start from that basic human need to change the society. And I think, we clearly we have a long ways to go, but if we can contribute to, in some small way, I mean, just in the Valley, we contribute to every K through 8 school we give free soup to on a monthly basis, pretty much, and it's just for the kids. It's just in the freezer for kids who show up and haven't had breakfast, haven't had lunch, whatever, and we just do that because. And is Lynn in here? But we also give to the homeless shelter. It's just you have to start somewhere in it, and then that's kind of our motto. So purity, sustainability, integrity, and love are the tenets of our company, and we try to match all 4 of those with every step we take. And if we don't, then we kind of turn away from. I mean, Cammie, who's my partner, Cameron, right there. She spent 18 months looking for packaging that was sustainable. We launched our online business, and it was so overwhelmingly successful. We were like, wait a minute, we're not ready for that because our packaging wasn't sustainable. And so we kind of pulled back on it, and then we spent the time Cameron spent the time to investigate what was going to be sustainable to the point of where loving our earth. Okay, so is cotton packaging insulation or cornstarch packaging insulation, which is less impact on the environment? And I mean, we went that deep because we wanted it to be we wanted to kind of walk our truths. So, it's taking us we're 3 years old, it's taken us a little bit longer to go in, but because we've very kind of methodically taken our steps.
That's great. So Jerry, since you at this point sit on the investment side of the equation, hearing stories like Steve's and Gina's where companies have, a very purposeful mission, are taking care of the environment, their employees, and might grow more slowly or scale differently. How do you look at that from an investment point of view?
Well, I can give you some stories. In early 2013, I sat in a little beach house in Venice Beach with a handful of the first Snapchat employees, and we're sitting there and having lunch and talking about what this could be. Because literally, it was what could it be? We had a handful of users compared to what they have today. And what impressed me is how Evan Spiegel and his partner Bobby were so focused on the customer, on the user, to create a connection. They wanted to, as different than Facebook at the time, they wanted to create a connection for people that wanted to be intimate, for your true friends, and create some sort of intimacy where you could share how you felt with each other. And they, instead of being focused on what they wanted for themselves, they were very mindful of the customers that were using it, and their passion and curiosity was driven to how they could make better connections between people. And what I think that's different about them and other companies with similar ideas is the discernment that they brought to that process. Because you need to have a discernment. There's lots of things you can do, but you need to be able to prioritize what it is that is important right now. Because there's a whole list of always a lot of things to do if you're an entrepreneur, but figuring out what's important right now is the thing that you want your culture to help you figure out. So the culture was driven by that mission to be focused on the customer. And I think that is very powerful. Even at Twitter, when I sat around with the first 30 people in San Francisco in 2009, they too were focused on big ideas like freedom of speech but they were really trying to think about how can we enable better communication and greater sharing of information. And that's when they were trying to invent the product. And no one knew back in 2009 if Twitter was going to be some little trend that just disappeared off the face of the planet or not. Same with Snapchat. And in both cases, they showed at the early stages the right amount of discernment and focus on the customer, focus on the other. And there's mindfulness in that I found compelling. As an investor, we have to think about this and how do we work with people like this? And given my experience at the time, because besides the two companies you mentioned, I also founded a software company called Open Vision. We wrote the business plan, and I founded a t-shirt company in my 20s. And so having had this experience, they had asked me, well, what do we do about this, or what do we do about that? And what I did was never give them the answer. What I tried to do was to frame it for them and how they should look at the problem and let them do the math themselves. And I found that to be scalable because people then could begin to change their perception. In my business, and a lot of people are smart. There's a lot of intelligence. But intelligence is just a tool. You need perception. You need discernment to put intelligence to work in the right way. And so I look for the patterns in these early companies where you can see scalability, because a lot of things are great for a short period of time, and then they don't scale. And that's the hardest thing, is really getting to some place where what you want to do for people can happen on a mass scale. And that's when there comes value. The fact that there's 175,000 people on Snapchat every day creates value for those people that want to make that communication. And I think that being mindful about other people instead of what you want, and particularly to make sure your employees are focused on that same mission. Jeff Bezos, who was here last spring, talks about when he started his company, he was an analyst at D.H. Shaw, and he was trying to figure out what is it I can do to start my company? What principles can I base my company on? And he said he found two things that he didn't think were going to change. He needed something to create a platform of stability for at least a decade, he thought. And the two things he came up with was, number one, people will never tired of getting things at a cheaper cost, less expensive. And people will never tire of getting things faster. And if I make those two things happen in my principles, and everybody in my company thinks about that, I'll have happy customers. So all of Amazon is created, and its success is because it's ruthlessly focused on the customer and how to bring joy to that people, and in their own way. Mm-hmm. That's what they're thinking about. So I think that, when you think about love and compassion for things, it starts when you think of the other person and not you. Mm-hmm. And too many entrepreneurs I know, it's all about them, or it's all about their idea. And you have to take that, it can start that way, but you have to move and to think about the people that will use it and use discernment to be able to get momentum. And creating momentum, in the Buddhist world, they call it wind horse. That momentum comes when you're aligned with something greater than yourself. Mm. And that's what we look for at Twitter, that's what we look for at Snapchat, that's what I look for at Flipboard, that's what I look for a lot of these investments that have hundreds of millions of happy people using the products.
P.S. He was part of those, which is amazing. So I have a question for you, Jerome. So when you were in school, I think in University of Mississippi, mm-hmm. and then
What's coming here?
What's that? No.
Do I need to brace myself?
No, not at all. But I think personal theories come over a series of years. Mm-hmm. And I love that you created a TED Talk called, and you can also download this on his site, How a Dinner Party Can Save Your Life. So I would just be curious, how did you come to that thesis?
I am dead serious about that thesis. As Gina said, that when you see kids eating Doritos and such, they don't behave the same as they behave when they are sitting around mother's table. And so that we have pathways carved out. It's the most primal way to connect with one another is to break bread. We started out doing it around the campfire, I imagine, would it be thousands of years ago? But, when you're breaking bread, when you're sharing the same experience, because the research actually shows that it's not just breaking bread together, it's breaking from the same loaf together, eating, everybody having mother's soup. When you're doing that, there's something that says to your brain, it signals to your brain that you are among your people. When you're among your people, you drop your defenses, and that's when the oxytocin flows. You have the sense of bonding and the such. So there's no better, more delicious elixir than sitting among your people and breaking bread together. I think it's what we've been doing since I didn't think of this concept. It started with family dinner. Yeah.
There was a Harvard study, I believe, that they wanted to understand the students that were the most successful across all demographics, ethnicities, religions, everything.
Yes.
What did they have in common? It was family dinner.
That's right.
So it was sitting down at the table every night and eating as a family, which I must say we do every night, don't we? We have dinner every night, 6 to 6:30. We sit down as a family, and I think that there's so much truth and value in that. There's, it's documented that those
the better
children,
grades,
better
yes, it is.
everything.
Well, and again, it's not necessarily what you're having as much as having the same thing and that shared experience. You can't really control or it's like, what's really going on there? Is it the food? It's probably the sense of community, though. And it also enhances your sense of belonging. And that's one of the things, that sense of belonging and that sense of community that assuages your anxiety, not only at home, but it also does it at work. You were talking about the company, when you create an environment where people have a lot of autonomy and can express themselves and be creative, they feel safer, you function better when you feel safer. And that's a sustainable model. Skippy asked me earlier, is there any research to support that, that's the better way to go, because fear will also help you get things done, but that's not a sustainable model.
Gina, I'd love to have you tell everybody about the FedEx Award, which actually comes from the love of your fan base to start out with, and then just through to how breaking bread with FedEx has had social impact, and conscious leadership.
Right. So in 2016, the FedEx, Cameron and I applied for the FedEx Small Business Grant, and the way to even get recognized is you had to be voted on, and you had to get your fan base to vote on you. So there were over 5,000 applicants, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're not gonna. And they break it down the first 600. So we made that cut. And we were like, yeah, go team, go team. And so every day we would, please guys, vote for us again, vote for us again. So then we made it down to the top 100. And then when the day came where we knew it was going to be, they picked 10 winners annually. And that day came, and it was 8 o'clock, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and we hadn't gotten a call, and we're like, shh. And then the call came in, and they said, is this Gina? I'm like, yeah. This is Kelly Martin at FedEx. We're calling to let you know you won. And we were dancing on the table. We told our children were dancing on the table. It was so amazing to be recognized by FedEx. And they flew us to Memphis, and they treated us like royalty. And then they picked our brains on how to help small businesses. And they were really serious about it. I sat up in front of thousands of FedEx employees, and they said, so what can we do to help you? And I said, cold storage. We need cold storage. We need cold transportation. Guess what? They built a cold storage place in Memphis. They bought a freight line that's just cold storage. And I'm like, wow, you guys, you're walking the walk, But they invited us back so they pick. It's been 4 years that they've had I'm looking at Cameron to make sure I'm right. It's 4 years that they've been running this grant. This was 2017 was the 5th year, so there were 50 of us that have won. So they invited us back as a team this year to sit on the Entrepreneur Board. And What that means is 5 times this year, they fly me to Memphis or Dallas or whatever to sit and talk about how we can better help small businesses like ourselves. And what we did, as you know, is Cameron and I, we have a strong give back program to any cause relating to human trafficking. And I had the ear of Dan Mullally, who's been a part of FedEx for 35 years, and he kind of just flies around on the jet now doing good. And I sat down and I said, we're going to talk, and you're going to train all your people on how to spot human trafficking, and they are. So, and it was really amazing, to have their ear and to be able to say that. But they're a company that actually, they're doing so many things around caring for the world. I mean, they put me on hold for a few months because they were busy in Houston, busy in Puerto Rico, busy in Florida, busy in California. They were just inundated with getting supplies to these people. So, as you said, that was born of the love of our customers. If they hadn't taken the moment to go online and vote for us directly, we wouldn't have made that. There were 5,000 other companies that applied for this.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't about the money, because the money was nothing. It was $7,000. It was really about the relationship. And they have continued to be, I was on the phone with them on Thursday for an hour and a half, but they continue to be strong supporters of us, and it's brought about this kind of an amazing relationship that they're go-to for everything. If we need something, we're like, let's call Kelly Martin. What can they do to help us? So.
That's fantastic. Well, and it occurs to me, so Jerry, when, the Aspen City of Wellbeing has, been around and finding your voice, and I'd love to hear why now for Lead with Love? You've been in business
It
for
was
a
my
long
wife,
time.
100%. I mean, she was inspired by Deepak Chopra, and Deepak said, you should do the City of Wellbeing, and she went out and found Jess and some other people, and they did it all. I mean, I just sit back in awe and watch again, there's a purpose, there's a mission that's underlying Lead with Love and the City of Wellbeing, and you see that sort of intentionality in the efforts they do, just between, who attended this event last year? Yeah, it's good. And then we got about half of new people. So this is much, much more of a scalable enterprise this year. There's much more going on this year, and you'll see the same next year because of the intentionality cuts through. They could have done many different things, with Lead with Love, but what they are doing is focusing their intentions, and they work really hard because it's an iterative process. And then what they're really doing is building a brand. When you talk about Federal Express being nice to you and doing what they're doing, is they're trying to extend their brand.
Yes.
Right? And in today's world with everything on the internet, creating a brand is first and foremost, because it's a rallying point under which you can attract suppliers, customers, the things you need to succeed. And a brand is, and this is something my friend Richard Branson said to me, he said, a brand is not what you think it is. It's what the customer thinks it is. And it's a classic mistake of entrepreneurs. They think, oh, I'm going to do this. It's never that. It's an iterative process of continuous building it. So Federal Express has been around for 30 years or more, and they're still working on it. It's still a thing that's evolving. And that evolution has to be, if you want to talk about consciousness, conscious leadership, it's to stop thinking about yourself and think about the problem you're solving for others. And if it's a high-value problem, you're likely to be a successful entrepreneur if you apply the right mindful skill set to that. But you've got to pick the right problem to solve, and again, whether it's the 8 limbs of yoga or the Eightfold Way in Buddhism, it's not what you do, it's the way you do it, right? And if the way you do things will establish your brand. And if you do that in a way that's meaningful, the world will be your admirer. So, think about that in all of your actions, and there's nothing about building a business where you have a moment not to be conscious about it. Every decision counts. In my opinion, having done this for 20-something years, it's decision-making, being conscious. The universe is always giving you data. And if you're not awake, you're missing the moment to make a decision. So you have to be conscious of what's coming through your way, Be aware of it and make the decision. Because not making the decision is missing that cubic centimeter of chance that you just might be the next step in your business, like applying for a contest and
Yeah,
winning it.
yeah. And
So
it was a game changer.
Be conscious. Everything counts. There's never a moment when you can go on autopilot. You're always building your brand. The way you do things matters.
Well, that brings me to my next question, and this can be answered by everyone, is, the notion of if you want to know your true self, and have nowhere to hide, become an entrepreneur and start a business, and then suddenly you know yourself. So
You can't hide from yourself in
can't.
business.
Yeah,
You
it's
got to
really
look
hard.
at the bank account at the end
Yeah.
of the month and say, well, how am I doing?
And then there's no one really to blame because you're ostensibly the person that's making decisions. I'd love to hear just from your point of view, or tools that you've used along the way that have helped you, be the kind of conscious business leader that you are today.
I call Jerry.
That
I'm stuck out.
is good. Is Jerry scalable? We can give
No,
out-
no, I'm
Okay.
going to be selfish. No,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you have to start as you mean to go on, and pick whatever those tenets are that you choose for your company. And each time you make a decision, and Jerry really taught me this, you look at those tenets, say, am I meeting this? Am I meeting this? Am I meeting this? If you're not, don't do it. And stay true to that as much, and it's hard. I mean, and he drilled it into me. You stay true to it because that's how you're going to build a successful brand. And it is about building your brand. And the brand is bigger than you and everything else. It is about the customer. And ultimately, if you don't have a customer, you don't have a brand. So we try to, for Gina Cucina, my team is right there, we try to look at everything from integrity, sustainability, purity, and love, and move forward. And it's sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's easier it would have been a lot easier if we'd have gone with styrofoam boxes. Let me tell you, we would be at a different place right now, but we would have been polluting the earth. We would have probably had more than thousands of customers but we stopped. We pulled the plug because we didn't feel good about us as a company. So start as you mean to go on and maintain it.
I like the idea of feeling good about what you do as well. There's lots of people who design these high-end homes in Aspen. Why come to us? What makes us special? And to me, we established very early on in our company that we were going to be giving back to the communities that give so much to us. And so for us, we've always established pro bono partners, volunteer hours for our employees, those sorts of things, because nothing really supports them like feeling like they give back too. That kind of piece of service where you're sending that love out into the community has really helped us as a brand, but also for retention, for just general well-being within the office, that feeling. So we donate back like 15% of net profit every year to give back to the community. We have a week of vacation so people can go volunteer specifically. So we've, as a company of we just hired 28, our 28th employee. But we've given back more than 5,000 hours to the community. That's huge.
That's huge.
And we get so much buy-in from the community and so much buy-in from the people we work with because they feel that too.
Well, and I know we just hired our third person. And she specifically joined us because of our givebacks. And that's what she was like, wow, I like what you're doing. I want to be a part of the team. And I'm sure it was the flavor profile, right, Rebecca? Yeah, okay. But you're right. I think giving back is, it's part of who we are as a company. We've been doing it from the moment we were born as a company, and I think it helps everybody. And I feel good about it. I'd rather give than take. It's much more pleasurable to help, And I think it does raise your. If I'm giving, I'm happy, and that's I think that's a great point.
If you got a good thing going, and you can get hijacked running that good thing, And so when you said you're talking about your brand, if it takes, and you're thinking about it a lot, under the hood, your dopamine, it taps your dopaminergic system. I mean, you're dopamine rich. And when you're dopamine rich and achievement oriented, then you forget the people around you. And you negate relationships because you just can't. We're not hardwired that way. You don't do the both at the same time. You don't have oxytocin flowing and dopamine at the same time. It's just dopamine can diminish oxytocin or trump oxytocin. And so I guess what I'm really saying though is that I think that you have to have systems in place to remind you to be human and to connect in these kind of companies. Like he said, that they do the community building activity that reminds them to be human, even though they're busy building 28 homes at one time. More? Yes.
More.
And so, wow. And, but really having some systems in place, because you can get so busy signing the $50 million deal that you don't show up for the 6 o'clock dinner that your family has every night. So, and your company, you can get so busy meeting your goals and achieving that unless you have, I like to call it circle ups or check-ins, to check back into the human person, because really success will hijack you.
Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the systems we just put in place as we've been growing, and it's been kind of rapid over the last 3 years. We were like 8, 12, 24, and it's going to be 30. And it's going very quickly. We opened a second office, which was a huge challenge. And how do you keep that culture somewhere else? And this gets back to your breaking bread portion of it, but also kind of these circle ups at the same time.
Yeah.
We started requiring our managers to spend $300 a month in love support on each staff member. And so we do that down to our managers, and we can check it like, hey man, you got to take your team out to lunch. You're not spending your $300 an employee on just loving them. Like, go love them more.
Right.
And
So
that
each
has
employee
been,
gets $300?
the managers are in charge of distribution over the staff below them.
Okay.
So, but everybody should receive at least $300 a month worth of extra love.
Got it. That's awesome.
And if you didn't have that, but they're so busy. If you didn't have that,
Yeah, you need a mechanism.
in your performance ratings, did you spend 300? If you don't have that there, you'll forget to do it. You just can't help but forget to do it.
And Jerry, that have you found in the companies that go like a Twitter or Snapchat as they grow from 2 employees to hundreds, is it really challenging to keep the culture? I mean, that seems like it's got to be.
So what Evan does, he went to a special high school, I think, and the high school took the kids and they did a little retreat for 2 days. So everyone that's hired at Snapchat today, all 3,000 of them, the day they're hired, a couple days around it, whether it's a security guard, engineer, receptionist, they go together for a weekend and they tell each other's story and they get to know each other so that they can relate. And Snapchat is not a family, it's a team. And a team is driven, to accomplish things. But the humanity of these retreats, so that you know everyone's name, and when they tell their story, then there's something behind the name. It's pretty hard to say, oh, okay, I know everyone's name in this room, but if I know your story, I'll remember who you are. I'll have a sense of connection with you because we've told each other's story, which is at the core of Snapchat. And so he really, did something which really lines up with his principles, with what he's trying to build. And what gives the real momentum beyond the handful of initial people is, A, that you know who you're going to work with every day, and you're driven by your shared mission. If you're on a mission to do something and change the world, everybody counts. Everybody matters. And everybody in the company knows that they're an extension of the brand. Their behavior outside of Snapchat matters. What they do inside Snapchat matters. And so there's a sense of, awareness of that I am part of something bigger than me, and I feel good about that. And these companies don't spend money taking people out to lunch because they all have lunch indoors. They Twitter, and then they have their own cafeterias because they want people to sit down and connect and share ideas. So it's not just enough to go out and have fun and drink a beer and watch a baseball game or something, but it's really fun while they're doing what they do to share ideas, because they're in the business of creation and creating things, and it starts with consciousness, thoughts that lead to ideas. And so if you have conscious workers, you can get better thoughts and better ideas, and you're going to make more money, and you're going to scale, and you're going to do more for the world, and you're going to be better at solving those problems. So.
We do children's theater together, musical theater, as a company with our kids.
Nice.
Once a year.
I think
It's horrifying and terrifying, but
I think the other half of that is ownership that listens.
yeah.
Right? All of this communication can come up the boat, but if it's not listened to, if it's not received.
Well, here's the way Snapchat grows too, is they acquire other entrepreneurs. There was two young men, if you met Daniel and David Lieberman. Well, he acquired the Lieberman Brothers company, which also includes two Lieberman sisters. So the 4 of the 9 children are in one company, and they just had a meeting organized by the Liebermans, which is all the founders that work inside Snapchat, to recreate and rejuvenate the founder feeling. So what you have to do is not lose that sense of urgency, that sense of impact. I mean, we only have so many years in our working life. Why not do something that one, is a path with heart, that you're passionate about, that you feel good about, and 2, why not do something that creates impact, right? And those are part of the values. The other thing we talk about, you have principles and you have values that derive from the principles that drive you. And if you have those values in the right order, you're going to have happy people. You're going to have people that feel this is meaningful, it's important I come to work. And it's an adult organization. People come to work when they need to. There's no time clock or anything like that. So I think that if I look at places like Snapchat, they're pushing the envelope. They're changing the way people come together in unique ways. And it's going to be messy at times, but the impact is extraordinary across the world. And that's awesome.
You're going to have even happier people if you're approachable, if you posture in such a way, like you said, ownership that listens. Yeah, people, you don't get to hear the truth unless you act like you want to hear the truth. There are people in power now that you have to say what they want to hear. I don't think they're being, the emperor's not being told that they're not wearing a coat.
Those are dead companies.
And
those are dead
that
and
is not
dying companies. When management says, I only want to hear, I only want you to say what I want to hear, those are dead.
And
those are dying.
And I would argue that there are some companies where people could hear even more if they were approachable. You might be hearing some things, but you might get to hear even more if you are approachable.
Well, so that brings me to my last question, which is, I'm sure there's a lot of people sitting here who are wondering, like, how do you listen? I mean, Raj talked about yesterday that there's people suffering at our happy companies, and unless you're looking for them, they can hide themselves. So I'm curious how you start to spot as a leader when somebody in your organization is suffering and needs help. Like, what tools can people use as a leader? Again, no small question, I know. We'll end on that.
Man, how do we notice when people are having a hard time? For us, we're small enough. And to me, I have a personal relationship with just about everybody at our company. And if I don't, I have a personal relationship with somebody who's their manager. One of the tools we've found as we've grown is, this is part culture, part of the culture is caring. And so we establish internal mentors. And so when you start in the company, you have your trainer, your technical mentor. This is the person that's going to help you out with, the stuff you need to know. And then there's a personal mentor and somebody who's kind of maybe not in your technical aspect of that profession, but who can kind of show you the ropes, be an ear for you to listen on, specifically isn't in your project team, isn't in your group, so if you have to vent, If you have to understand why maybe you're off the rails or you're not understanding something, you have somebody with a bit more objectivity that you can talk to, and the point of their incorporation is that they talk to you on that level.
And I would say, listen to your wife when you are complaining at night about somebody or something at work, someone at work, and and she makes a point that, well, maybe this or that, that you take feedback from all sources, and that start listening by also, by being heard and by allowing people to give you feedback, and then going and talking to those people that, not just the mentors, but just the people that you're complaining about. I mean, listen to them by listening to whoever is around you that's mentoring you.
I think what scales in my company at Insight, and what happened in most of the portfolio companies, is to create small teams. Don't allow things to get too big. Keep the small teams so that people, if someone's suffering on the team, it's obvious to the rest of the team, and they can intervene and they can say, hey, take some time off, do what you need to do. Because you can't be accountable to a room of 25, but you can certainly be accountable to a team of 5. And so for whatever business you have, keep the team small. And that way they're accountable to each other as well as the larger organization. And that's something that people need to think about as they grow. How do we grow in small teams?
And do something to let people know that you were heard, that they were heard. When you listen, well, reflect back or make some changes. I mean,
there are
She's like,
3 of us.
"There's
We sit in a
3."
triangle. We sit in a triangle. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it is. I think part of that is the ability to listen. And if you, I have 4 kids. My life is listening. So that's how you see if someone is in some kind of a difficult time, and you just have to be aware and listen, and that's part of being conscious, as Jerry said. And if we are going to change the world and make a better society that we can all raise our children and grandchildren and just move forward and hand it off, then we have to start there, because we're on a rocky path, and leading with love is of key importance right now.
there's a couple in the audience that do couples therapy. For couples, I overheard them talking, but I imagine they would agree that whatever you learned in couples therapy, if you've had to go to couples therapy, or read anything about it, whatever you learned there generalizes to the workplace. And and we teach a lot of active listening skills in couples therapy, and that's how you listen at work as well.
Yeah.
I'll leave one thought that I've said this many times before, but I'll say it, I'll never tire of saying it. At least here in America, most of us have grown up believing a leader is someone else in the room. And that mentality pervades companies. The thing about being an entrepreneur, and this is the thing about what Jess and Gina are doing with Lead with Love as social entrepreneurs, is they're bringing leadership to the front. If you have small teams, everyone is a leader. Everyone can participate, right? Everyone needs to learn, everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. What Snapchat is trying to do is to not lose that entrepreneurial spirit, because by definition, an entrepreneur is not looking to a boss to tell them what to do. They are taking the leadership of their life. They're taking the risk. They're taking the bet on themselves to say, I can go do this. But no one does it alone. Not sports players, no one. There's always a team behind them. And so the team is an opportunity to share leadership and for everyone to participate with that sort of sense of responsibility and that sense of direction. And that's how companies become great.
Well, amazing.
like the word mindfulness now, it means so many things, no one knows what it means. The venture capitalists, there's so many, no one knows what it means. I was an entrepreneur before I was a venture capitalist, and I did it a long time ago when, in my world of software, it was a tiny world. You know, we had dirt kicked in our face for the first 2 years raising our fund, and we stuck by our guns because we just believed, despite the fact that no one believed in us. And so it's our own personal journey. I think never look to a venture capitalist, just like don't look for a banker to be empathetic with your life. Look for a human being that has had experience that resonates with you. And it all comes down to the individual, and the title or the brand of the company doesn't necessarily translate into the right person and who has values. My philosophy, my activity is a direct result of my experience on both sides of the equation. So, and the best people I know in the business, we all have blind spots, but you find and understand someone, what their blind spots are, and hopefully you can manage around them.
For me, I tackled Cameron on the schoolyard playground because I had heard, she lived in Venezuela for 9 years, and I thought, she's a pioneer, she's going to be able to handle what I'm doing. So for me, it was really about, I needed someone who was going to get in the trenches with me, who was not afraid, who was fearless, and who could jump in and just do whatever needed to be done. Because there, as a startup, you do everything. I mean, I'm washing dishes as much as I'm creating recipes, so I'm mopping floors at 3 a.m. So as a beginner, I actually looked for that person whom I believe could handle what I was embarking upon, someone who could jump in with me and who wasn't going to bail ship because it was too rough, because I knew it was going to be rough. I knew it was going to be rocky. Mm-hmm. So as I move on, I don't know Rebecca is another one. She came in because she loved what we stood for. So far, thus far, it's been people-based and knowing we needed help and knowing we needed someone who'd say, let me do that, I'll do that. Let me do that, I'll do that. And it was because you do have to be a team player. And I am nobody's boss. We are, that's not how we operate at all. It is very much a team, and I will finish with, it started with people for me, which is what my whole company is based on. It is about the people involved and the people we're feeding.
Let me say that my experience is that's one of the hardest problems a startup has. And it's hard because the entrepreneur, when you start off, it's you and a partner or you and a couple people, and you wear all the hats. And what's really hard is to take off a hat that you've been wearing and give it to someone else and say, okay, I'm going to trust you with this hat, and I gotta let it go. And so that's a challenge. Yeah. And the way you solve that problem, the way it's been solved by the great companies of the world, is laser focus on the customer, which gives you laser focus on the problem you're solving. And the customer and the problem you're solving will tell you what you need more focus on. So while, yes, you have maybe 2 or 3 different hats you want to take off and have other people, but if you're truly delivering a quality product, quality solution, service to the customer, the problem will dictate to you what you need right now. And that's the hat you take off. And hopefully that clarity, when you find that person either in the supermarket or in the playground or wherever, you'll know. But you have to know in your mind first, and you have to have the process by which you know. And if you don't have the process by which you know, then it's wishy, squishy, I'm not sure. And that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the person applying for the job or you picking them. Make sense? Yeah. Okay.
So,
Steve, do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
jump in real quick.
And
We failed at this. Early on, I hired for the job. I need one of these, and no way. That was terrible. You get one of those. And that's not how you got to be where you are. You got to be where you are because you have your special sauce. You're unique. And so we started hiring people who were like us. Our special sauces are people, right? We're a service-based industry, and if we're doing it different, we can't hire industry standard people. Otherwise, we'll end up being industry standard. And that's not where we want to be. So we hire the people. and figure out what they're very good at, and then give them the hats to wear. And I find that they will come up with roles that you didn't know you needed and are going to be desperately lost without.
The problem that I had when I started was to just imply what we were doing. You need to take the vision, and as things happen, and make it explicit so that there's no interpretation or guessing games. We are here to do this. This is the problem we solve. This is the way we want to solve it. And as you grow, continuing to make things explicit allows people to come into your company and know right away what it is. You don't need some intermediary to say, okay, now this is how you have to do it, right? Let me give an example. So if I'm at Amazon and I'm selling books, I'm an early employee, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, we're not just selling books anymore, we're selling computers. I thought we're a bookseller. Jeff Bezos' principles, no. We're here to give customers an experience of getting something less expensive and something that gets there faster. If you do that right, you can sell books, you can sell movies, you can sell anything, right? And so, but the people that first started there that got fired, a lot of them, thought they were booksellers. And we sell books here, don't we? And the people in the warehouse like, I thought we're just loading books. I don't know how to do this. And the thought was if the people that understood the principles, then you can evolve and change. And that's what you need to do, because at the end of the day, all entrepreneurship is an improvisation.
Yes.
Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
And we have to be willing to be flexible and deal with the changing times, emotion. There's a 2001, terrorist attack, and wow, everything changes. What are we doing now? But if you have the principles like Jeff Bezos, it doesn't fall apart. So that's what he did. He said the customers first. Here's the problem we solve. That's the thing you need to be explicit. The problem we solve isn't getting books better to people. No, the problem we solve is to making people happy, giving things to them that they need, and getting them faster and getting them cheaper. That's what we do. And that was explicit. So as they add on new things, as they improvise, it scales. Because people don't get hooked on the wrong things with the implied part of the business.
Never miss a day
Oh,
without exercise
here's the
or without movement of some type. And the research would suggest that you don't do it, you do it every single day, maybe 7 minutes some days, but whatever your practice is, do it every day. Just like you're brushing your teeth, it becomes a habit. Because if you do it 2 or 3 times a week, or you take 2 days off when you're on vacation, then you get back and it's snowing, and so like being really committed to health and doing some kind of practice and having data to suggest that you're to back it every day.
My experience is stress is when you're mistakenly outcome driven, results oriented people stress themselves out because many things cannot be controlled. So the first thing is to shift from wake up in the morning, I have to do this, to I have to do the best I can do. And some things you'll realize that the energy isn't going to happen today, and you just be aware, be conscious, and you look at the emails, you're like, okay, this isn't going to get solved today. I'm going to move to something else. So instead of being results driven and trying to control it, you re-stress by being process. What's the process by which I go to work? What's the process by which I do what I do? And focus on that process, recognizing that you can only do what the universe is going to allow you to do that day or that week or that month. And so responsibility gets misinterpreted to winning or getting the right answer or solving an unsolvable problem. And what you want to do is focus on a process by which you address the problem, address the outcome, and your stress will lower. On a practical basis, sometimes you're in a level of intensity in the morning. You can take a break at your desk and breathe. If you need a 5-minute breath, do a little 5-minute breath, do a little movement in your seat if you have to. I personally why I moved to Aspen. I'd go skiing at lunch for 2 hours or go mountain biking, and that lunch break was an activity that gave me an opportunity to access my creative mind. So again, those things are the process. How is the process that you're going to go about it? Because that scales. It doesn't scale if I have to do this today.
Can I say something as a clinician? I like what he's saying. You have to put it. No, I really like what he's saying. He's saying that the way you talk to yourself, the story of your life, and I recommend that if, this might not get, I didn't do this today. However, I did do this and I did do that. You need to write that down every day. Write down, tell a story about how you lived that day. All those things he said, but also take 3 minutes or however long you want to and put it down on paper so that you can know that it is a practice. You're not just hoping that you did it.
Gina?
I kind of agree with it all. I mean, it is a process, and you have to accept your little successes in every moment and every day. It's how you teach your children. I'm like, oh, you did this wonderful, great job today. Now, what are we going to do tomorrow? So if I'm always looking for the end result, I'm going to fail. So I just try to get through each day and take each little success. Wow, we got 10,000 pounds of carrots. Say, yeah, because they're really hard to find,
Yeah.
So, just whatever it is. So it is, I agree wholeheartedly with what both Jerry and Jerome said, it's process. It's one step, accepting the successes, and going, you know what, that's just not happening today.
No, Jerry said it. I just said put it to a discipline by
Yeah.
writing it down so that you can know that you're doing what you
Right.
said you were going to do, which is telling the right story, telling giving yourself an internal narrative to go by.
Right.
This is who I am. This is what I do.
And lastly, but not least, Steve.
For me, a lot of it is about depersonalization. I think too many of us as entrepreneurs become our work, and the stresses of work become our stresses. And I think that stepping back from it and realizing that you are not your work, you are not the pressure other people put on you, and giving yourself that observational third-party status where you can kind of step out of the stress and see it for what it is. Understand it, and either you can choose to take it on, not take it on, distribute it, however that is. But it's really getting to that third-party view of the company and of the stress that really helps me.
And
Awesome.
sleep.
Oh, go ahead.
Sleep helps.
I was going to say too, like three are married to yogis, so that could also
Definitely helps.
Get yourself a yogi, folks.
I don't know if that adds to the stress level or takes it away, or I don't know.
It's sleep, sweat, storytelling, and socializing. Those are the 4 S's.
Laughing, always laughing.
Yeah.
To manage your stress.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and thank you.